Hi, I'm Joe, and this is the Decahedron RPG Podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Joe. This is another feedback episode. This is pretty much the continuation of last episode where I answered the feedbacks I could until I ran out of time. And so I'm just going to pick up where I left off. Before I get to that though, just an update to what's happening in the future. Last week I recorded an episode with Daniel where we did a review of a game called Legends of the Ancient World. Just earlier today I recorded an episode with Jason where we generated his Tunnels and Trolls character for the upcoming Frontier Forts of Kelnor game with James and Daniel. I still have to do an episode I have in mind based on an old blog post and brought to mind by the recent episodes of Minions and Musings. And again, sometime in March, Valerie and I will sit down and review the stuff we watched during February. That's that. Let's get started.
Mail call from the United States of America.
First one we have is not a voicemail. It's an email from Eric. And Eric said, just listened to episode 112, January 23rd, 2024. Great job. Attached is the Nano RPG I shared with Jason. This is what Jason mentioned may be running on his Discord. I put it together last spring for my home group as an exercise to create something. I hope it brings enjoyment to you. Thanks. So Eric sent me a document for a little homebrew Star Trek thing that he does. I looked it over, Eric. Thank you very much for sending that to me. I like it. A little different from my take. I sent you my take. I hope you like that. Great. Another Trek fan, another gaming fan. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for sending me that file. I really enjoyed it. Also from episode 112, we have this.
Yo, Evil Jeff. Hey, just listen to this podcast with doing the Tunnels and Trolls character with Daniel. Good stuff. I appreciate that. The more I listen to how you did that, where you did the birth, childhood, adolescent, whatever, and distributing the dice, etc., I really like that. I think that helps create a better character while keeping it random. So do appreciate that. But the one thing you did say in the podcast that I wanted to comment on was the mail call. And I know you did the new AI tune for that. And while I can appreciate it, I'd rather you keep the old one. I'm just more partial to that whole newsreel style sound there. To me, it just sounds better. So that's my vote on it. We'll catch you later.
By the way, everyone, Evil Jeff is the host of the Minions and Musings podcast. Right now he's doing a series about sort of a collaborative world building he's doing with someone else. And, you know, he's talking about the wood spirit elves that he's making and their background and everything. Interesting stuff. By all means, give it a listen. Hey, Evil Jeff, thank you very much for your feedback. And thank you for liking the age groups thing. I can't say anything in the age group is, 100% original Joe, right? I mean, 1d6 in order, that's the infamous method 1. And the adolescent phase, roll them all, place them where you want. That is the AD&D first edition method 1. And the middle phase where you put it in 1 and then roll again. I grabbed that from a blog somewhere once I read, which I like the idea. But the idea to take all 3 of these and put them together for different points of a character's life, that is my contribution. That is what was original to me. Just earlier this morning, although the episode hasn't aired yet, Jason and I recorded using that method. So I've used it 3 times now on the show. And yeah, I do like it. I think it's a fun process. It's not quite Traveler character creation, but it is fun and good, and it makes for interesting characters, and I like it. So yeah, thanks for that. The AI mail call, well, you were the only one that expressed any sort of preference one way or the other, so I consider that unanimous. You will notice that the old one is back, even though Valerie doesn't like it. You say the newsreel type feel. I don't know if I've ever talked about it. So Mail Call was a radio show that was done during World War II. It was recorded live in Hollywood with the big stars of the day, and it would be sent out to the different theaters of the war during the war itself. So that is where that comes from. Thank you very much for that feedback, sir. The next show that we have feedback for was episode 113. The only feedback we have for that show was from Jason.
Hey, Joe. The other thing I was thinking about was for your character and their backstory. You know, I don't think I'd want to know that Raphael killed my father. I wonder, obviously you can role play that and you can pretend you don't know it, but I think a reveal like that would be so much more effective if the player didn't know that and the DM just sprung it on them. Because you as the player always have that in the back of your head, and as much as you are going to try to play Antoinette if she doesn't know it, that Raphael killed her father, ultimately you, the player, know. So I do think that would keep you from having as much enjoyment when the reveal happens. Just curious about your thoughts on that and the idea of, I don't necessarily have any issue with the idea of having a plot twist like that, but having the player suggest the plot twist, I think changes the dynamic to some degree. And I was just curious about your thoughts on that.
Hey, Jason, thanks for that. By the way, everyone, Jason is the host of the Nerds RPG Variety Cast, another great podcast. Links are in the show notes. So you bring up an interesting point there, and you say you wouldn't want to know, but this is the thing, right? This is in my mind. It's part of the character's background. You know, this is what happened, but she doesn't know it. So do I remember that I came up with that idea? I came up with this in theory before I ever told the GM. So do you get what I'm saying? It's my idea. The only other way I could do it is, actually, I guess there's two other ways to do it. One is I could put it in my backstory that she already knows, but that takes that potential scene away, right? I want to experience that scene as a player. I would love to run through that scenario and play that session out. I think it would be a great session. The other way I guess I could do it is to not put it there at all and kind of hope that the GM picks up on it. But then we're also going with the other thing, which is what started the conversation in that episode, where James said a lot of players don't give their characters family because that's just giving the GM a way to mess with their characters. And you got to admit that if every time a player gives you a background with family, if you go in and then mess with the family and do stuff like this, you're kind of a jerk GM, right? And James's point becomes valid. Players then will respond by not putting that stuff in their background. So it's that idea, where is that border between, you know, the GM gets to control the world. The player doesn't get to, you know, the players don't get to control the world, right? They can make some suggestions. Hey, can I come from a little town that was over there somewhere? And sure, right? Whatever. And likewise, when it comes to the character, I mean, even though the GM is in charge of the entire world, there's certain things that you just don't do to a character, right? It's that player agency that became a buzz term a few years ago. Right, but it's your character. I don't get to do, there's certain things, I don't get to say, your character's going to do this. Well, no, I can suggest that he does that. I could set up a situation where he has little else to do, but then you're railroading, right? And to say that you're going to go in and say that this relationship was something like that without talking to me, I don't know. I think that if it's not crossing the line, it's awfully close to crossing the line. So, yeah, I think that's my thoughts on it right there. I think that it's something that if a GM was going to do that, then he would need to discuss it with you anyway. So while the idea of, yes, that scene coming at me as a surprise, well, A, it can't because I already had the idea. And B, it seems to be crossing that player GM line of demarcation. So no, I don't think that would be desirable. That's my thoughts. Of course, you're entitled to disagree. People are people and approach life differently. All right. The next voicemail I have is from Riley. Riley is the host of the Diegetic Advancement podcast. Another great podcast. Yeah. And let's give Riley a listen. This one isn't about any particular episode. It's about a few episodes.
Hi Joe, Riley here. Thought I'd give you a call on some of your latest shows. A couple of misremembered things about me in a row, which I found funny. In your contest show, you mentioned that it was my first call-in. I think it was my second. And then in your latest episode, you said that I guessed correctly. I had guessed Air Force fairly generically, which isn't Star Trek. Maybe it was the closest, although it's Star Trek and Navy. I'm not sure. Anyway, it's a little funny thing. All good, of course. Looking forward to some of the new content you've got planned. I'll echo the thought on the actual plays. Really great way to see how a system actually plays and feels, rather than just reading reviews or the rules themselves. So looking forward to that, especially the edited down version. It'd be interesting to see how that plays out. See if I can adapt to a new jingle. I quite like your current one, and sort of identify that with your show. I'm sure it'll be good, but it might take an adjusting period. And looking forward to everything else that you do. So hope you had a good holiday season, and Happy New Year. Talk to you later.
Hey, Riley, thank you very much for that call. Yeah, okay. So as for the thing about the first time caller, I actually kind of remember when I was recording this and saying that, and I'm like, I don't think it's going to come out in the right order. So, surprise, I don't release the episodes in the same order that I record them. And sometimes I think that they're going to go out in this order and they end up going in another order and stuff like that. And if I'm remembering correctly, I do remember thinking that this isn't actually his first call, but this is the first call that's going to go out. And so I said that it was the first call when it was your second, but in my mind, it was going to be the first call that people heard. I don't know if I'm coming across as correctly, but I don't remember if they ended up coming out in that order or not. So that's what happened there in any case. The second thing you said was about guessing correctly, and you are right. You are not the person that guessed correctly. The person that guessed correctly was a man named David, and he's in the UK versus you're down in the South Pacific, I guess. Actually, what people call the South Pacific isn't nearly as far south as you are. So, yeah, anyway. Yeah, so I did cross the two of you. There are certain pairs of people that I always cross for whatever reason. I don't know. And I think with you and David, the first time I ever heard from either of you was roughly around the same time, and you're both overseas from my perspective. And so I think I just conflated the two of you briefly. So I apologize for that. Another people I conflate for some reason is Merc the Meek and Carl from the GMologist. And I think that's because there's some tonal quality that they share in their voice, and in my brain it crosses over. I don't know. As for the theme song, well, the new one is out. We've been using it for a while now. I hope you're enjoying it. There is something I want to try with it, and I keep meaning to, and I keep forgetting. In addition to having the lyrical track that she gave me, I have just the music, and I want to try the music. Maybe I'll do it for this episode if I'm thinking about it. I want to try just the music and me saying what I used to say over the Kevin MacLeod song. Hi, I'm Joe, and this is the Decahedron RPG podcast. And see if I like that better. But anyway, so what do you think of the new tune? And like I said, while you like the old one and I like the old one, my wife really hated it. And so that is what led me to look for something new. There we go. But thanks for your feedback, sir. All right. So, episode 114. Only feedback we got was from Jason. Take it away, Jason.
Hey, Joe. Jason here. Just listened to episode 114. Wow, what an experience. Yeah, when you were saying that, I definitely felt horrible for your mother. I can't imagine getting a call like that about my son and then not even saying the condition or, you know, hey, he's okay, or, you know, he's in the recovery room or has a concussion or something. Just leaving it wide open. That's horrible. And the prosecutor, I think you said it was a prosecutor, you know, putting you in the witness room with your assailants. That's crazy. That's different times. I'm glad you made it through that. And, yeah, sobering story. Thank you so much for sharing it. Really appreciate it.
Hey, Jason. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, it was an interesting night. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Oh, as for the witness room, yeah, so I guess what I left out of the story was that the two that actually did the job on me, they weren't the ones on trial. It was the older guy that was on trial, the one that had put them up to it, the one that was waiting with another gun in the next door parking lot. They were only at court because they were testifying against him as well. So I guess they made some sort of plea deal, and I don't know if like the plea deal was they did no time or they had probation or like all charges. I have no idea. I didn't ask any questions. You know, at the time I was still like 20 or so I didn't know how all that worked. Anyway, I don't think I knew what a plea deal was at that point. Although I remember hearing stuff about state's evidence in the in old movies or something. But anyway, so that's why they were there. They were there to testify against that dude. But yeah, it was weird, kind of surreal. Mostly internally, my whole thought process while I was in that room with them was completely alien from the me I normally know, and almost felt like detached. I just weird. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Let's move on to a different topic. Okay, it's episode 116 now. I have 3 voicemails. I'm going to play them all and then respond.
Joe, it's Evil Jeff. Just listen to your frustrations and feedback podcast. 2 comments. I understand your frustration there, all the prep work and so forth. Of course, I've been mostly on the other end of it where GM's waiting on me to finish up something, and just too many times I get busy and sidetracked with things, and it hurts. But I know it slows them down, and they're frustrated with that. But you know, I usually try to get done right before the game time starts, so you know, try to be good there. And during your feedback, you talk about different things, but made mention about upcoming podcasts, and one of them ones that you were doing in response to some of the stuff that I'm doing over my show. And I wanted to say thank you for that. You know, as long as I know people are out there and I'm helping other people create content, sparking ideas, then I will try a little bit harder to muddle through the anchor apocalypse and figure out a way to, you know, do podcast recordings and keep it as easy as possible for me. So thanks for your words there and encouragement, and we'll talk to you later.
Hey, Joe, Jason here. Listen to your latest call-in episode, and yeah, I am happy to eat some humble pie here. You know, I stopped playing AD&D prior to second edition coming out, so that doesn't exist for Jason. My AD&D stops like 1985. You know, I had the Unearthed Arcana and Oriental Ventures, but I don't remember if back in the day I had Wilderness Survival Guide and Dungeoneer Survival Guide or not. I know I never had second edition. I never had the Rules Cyclopedia. But so I didn't know what was written in the second. I should not have said definitively or whatever I said. That was wrong. I was speaking from a first edition AD&D point of view, but that doesn't change the fact that by my words I was wrong, and I'll happily admit that. I apologize for messing up which music Val liked and didn't like Again, obviously way out of my element here, so I'll back off on that. Yes, we did have a pro mask qualification, a protective mask qualification as well, and it sucked. When I was in the units I was in, we didn't have the holographic, so we didn't have any of that fancy EOTechs or aim points or any of that, the holographic sights. We just had iron sights. We had just got M4s before I got out, the carbines with the detachable carrying handles, and the weapons racks we had, the rifle racks were still made for M16s. So we actually had to take because the rail that carrying handle's on, we had to move that carrying handle down one so it would fit and work in the rifle rack. So basically you had to take the carrying handle, and when you're taking off that carrying handle and putting it back on, of course your hand screwing those screws on the side. So you're not going to have an exact zero because you're not putting the exact same amount of torque on the screws. So we're screwing up our zero every time. And the same thing for, my understanding is, the units that initially had aim points in the 82nd, they didn't fit the rifle racks, and they would go to PLDC. Anyway, there were times they made them take off the sight to put it on the rack, and of course then you've ruined the zero on it potentially, right? So yeah, crazy times. But anyway, nobody cares about that stuff. Thank you for all that you're doing. I look forward to your next episode. Take care.
Hey Joe, this is Carl calling. Hey, great stuff on your last couple podcasts. I did listen to your 40th anniversary, and that was pretty harrowing. I think it's good to share that. I have had a couple very harrowing experiences in my life, one of which I knew about, one of which I didn't even realize it was that dangerous. And yours sounds incredibly, I guess, traumatic is the best word that I can think of. I really enjoyed, though, on a more positive note, your talk about Traveler and making monsters for Traveler. It's such a fun system. I've played Traveler from Classic all the way to Mongoose Traveler 2. I've liked most iterations of Traveler. I think I've liked all iterations of Traveler, even the T220 and the Hero System Traveler. My favorite, for nostalgic reasons, is Mega Traveler. I love the skill and task system in that game. And I don't know how much time I have left. It looks like I have 30 seconds left. But I do get your frustration. I really get involved in the game, and I prep. And, you want players to do a few things. And maybe that's a fun topic to discuss on a podcast, the expectation of players. I know Daniel has done that a few times, how to be a good player. But it'd be fun to discuss it, and sorry, I might take that for an episode of my podcast. But take care, love your stuff, talk to you later.
All right, so those were feedbacks from Evil Jeff, from Jason, and from Carl. Carl is the host of the GMologist podcast. Let me go over my notes and talk about them. So understand the frustration, both Evil Jeff and Carl talked about that. Evil Jeff, you said that you're used to it from the other side. The frustration isn't that stuff isn't happening. The frustration is that they were all like, when are we going to play? When are we going to play? When are we going to play? So I said, okay, let's make this happen. And now that I'm engaged and I did my stuff, now no one seems to care. That's the frustrating part. Carl, it's interesting. Maybe that would make a good episode. I'm going to think about that. The other note I have, Evil Jeff, you said that I mentioned an upcoming episode based on your current series of episodes. It's actually about a blog post I wrote years ago, like 8 years ago or something. And it's just when I was listening to your podcast, it brought it up. I actually even sent it to you as a feedback, and I used the new email address that you got, but I never heard anything back, so either you didn't get it or you didn't appreciate it, one of the two. Jason, eating humble pie. That was 100% coincidence. You had sent in a feedback saying, you would like to see the Minotaur Thief. And so I shared that with James. And so he decided to make one. Actually, I decided to make one. And as he is wont to do, he said he would copy me. He is making his in second edition. And he had a question about the way something works in second edition. I don't know. I don't use second edition, right? I know that third, it's because it was about point buy. I was like, I know that third edition has a point buy. So I picked up a second edition book and I was flipping through it. And under the stat generation methods, I wanted to see if there was a point buy method. And right there, method 1, 3d6 in order down the line. I was like, oh, what a joyous coincidence. So yeah, I'm not any second edition rules expert like you. I stopped playing D&D before second edition. Well, maybe not like you. Maybe you just never migrated. I stopped. And as coincidence would have it, the trial that we were talking about in that previous feedback, that was my introduction to GURPS. It's when I went home for the trial, my friend Ernie, he was a GM. If you go look in the old editions of the Space Gamer magazine, he actually had an article or something. Maybe he won a contest or something, but he made an alien species and it's in there. Anyway, he had just gotten Man to Man, which was, Steve Jackson's first release for what would become GURPS. It was, in essence, the replacement for Melee from the Fantasy Trip. So that's what we were playing, but there was like newsletters from Steve Jackson's, and it was adding the advantages and disadvantages. It's when I was home for that trial that I was introduced to all that by Ernie, and that was when I was like, there are better games out there. And that's when I started moving away from D&D completely. But like you, I had Unearthed Arcana, I had Oriental Adventures, I had Dungeoneer Survival Guide. I don't remember getting Wilderness Survival Guide, but it's on my bookshelf, so I'm going to assume that I must have. And as for the M4, that's what I shot last time. I shot, and I don't think it's too much. I think a lot of role players think people like hearing how stuff in the military really works. Carl, as for the harrowing experience, well, I'm glad that you made it through your harrowing experiences, whatever they were. As for mine being traumatic, I think that would imply that I'm traumatized, and I would disagree with that. It's not really something I ever think about. It's like, it's this thing that happened, and it's done. Life goes on. It just so happened that I was at Niagara Falls when I recorded that, and I was like, oh, wow, why does this date sound familiar? Okay, and so, that's what happened there. But I'm not sure I would say traumatic. I mean, there's a whole lot more people out there that go through a whole lot worse stuff. They hit me over the head and they pointed a gun in my face, but then they went away, and it wasn't even my money that they took, right? It was my boss's money. So I call myself lucky. So, Traveler, big Traveler fan. I talk about Traveler a lot. My favorite version, of course, is the original, the classic. I never got into Mega Traveler. I did get into Mark Miller's Traveler right after, GDW broke up. I love the Fire Fusion Steel book out of, I think that was the book. Talk about alternate ways to make starships. That was one of my favorite gaming books for a while. You said T220. I don't know if you were trying to say the D20 version of Traveler, T20. Funny thing about that is I actually played Traveler with Hunter Gordon and that crew who were developing T20. You left out of your version GURPS Traveler, which I picked it up and I tried to get into it, but it felt like GURPS. It didn't feel like Traveler. And I think what it was is because it was GURPS in the original Traveler universe, although in alternate version where Emperor Stefan was not assassinated, and so the whole Mega Traveler Civil War never happened. Whatever. And that's not the part of Traveler I like. I never play in the Third Imperium. I never use their story. I never use any of that. And so I was left with just GURPS mechanics, and they were calling it Traveler. And I was like, this really is a Traveler. This is just GURPS. So. And finally, you said you thought you only had 30 seconds left. You actually had 1 minute and 30 seconds left. So on Google, you get 3 minutes, not 2, when you call my Google Voice line. So that is everything, and that is all the feedback we have. I do want to thank everyone for calling in. Links to all their podcasts are in the show notes. And even if you don't call in, I still thank you. I very much appreciate you for listening to me every week. And if you do want to send feedback, Send it to feedback@decahedron.com or any of the methods listed in the show notes. Thanks again, and until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Decahedron RPG podcast. Please come back